Hey, Chicago, what do you say? Coming at you live on this Sunnyside Thursday. This is the CHGO Cubs Podcast. Visit sunnyside.shop for bright buys every day, including 50% off your first 3 online purchases. Enter the promo code HICHGO at checkout to qualify. Again, HICHGO. Exclusions apply. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary. Bright buys every day, only for 21 and older or Illinois medical card holders. Speaking of sunny, it is spectacular in Chicago and beyond again today. 70 degrees and sunny and no humidity. Days like today are why we live here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
I used to dream
I've
of times
decided
like this.
that it's no longer summertime shy. It's autumn in the city. That's what it is. The leaves crinkling underneath your feet, changing colors.
I bet the ivy's red.
The ivy's turning red.
It's too bad we don't know that.
Yeah, that's true.
Think about
we
it.
would be able to see it at this point. Maybe they'd still be in it if you're at this point in the year.
We may not have playoff baseball, but we have had spectacular fall weather. 70, it's supposed to be 80 tomorrow.
Can't wait till it snows on Halloween and ruins every child's
It's not
Halloween.
going to this year. Not this year.
Knock on wood.
But my costume, oh no, you have to put a parka on. Cool.
One of the pros of not having playoff Cubs baseball is that when I come here, I get to leave a lot earlier, and then also I can take my time going home because I don't have to necessarily go home and do a bunch of crap. So that's allowed me to kind of adventure around and find new places to eat.
You should go to the beach today. There'd be nobody there. A walk along the beach, you take that beach path over to where Castaways is at, there'll be nobody on that path today.
You're right.
Everybody's at work.
Sometimes I ride the old electric bike over there, just the wind in the face.
Just for the vibes.
Yeah. But I went through DePaul the other day and went to this chicken place that I had never been to. I saw it on TikTok.
Review?
I give it an 8.5, 8.5.
8.5, really. Fried chicken?
Fried chicken sandwich. It's like, I think it's better than Chick-fil-A, personally.
Whoa.
Do we want to shout out the name or no?
Red Light Chicken. It's like it literally looks like a barn house, but it's a very, very small one.
Now, is the chicken like Nashville hot, or is it more like Chick-fil-A, just a breaded chicken
They have
sandwich?
like 4 different ones. I tried the plain one because it's the first time there. They like honey, hot, and then plain. There's like 3 or 4 different flavors.
And you had the plain one, and it was good.
It was good, yeah. Would
All
go
right,
again.
I would
and
try
it's
that
cheap.
out. Thanks for
The
bringing
sandwich
them.
is like $8, like with fries.
These days, that's a deal.
Yeah.
It's a deal. Shout out to them.
And it was a beautiful day.
They want to be a sponsor. We're here.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of weird because like it's in the heart of DePaul, and I'm not a college student, and I'm 33. But
Right.
whatever.
You just look like the creeper going down campus.
Hello, fellow
With your chicken
kids.
sandwich.
Hello, fellow kids, on my electric bike.
Chicken sandwiches.
While all these degenerates are walking on the sidewalk, hating that they're going to class.
Yep.
I don't miss those days.
So the report cards continue today. And I see hello to everybody in the live YouTube chat. We appreciate that. Make sure you subscribe to the CHGO Sports YouTube page.
There's an account that is claiming they are Justin Steele. And I feel like we should just treat it as it really is him because
we have
know
Carter Hawkins in the chat.
Sure.
It could be Justin Steele.
It actually could be, though.
He's a fellow podcaster.
Yeah.
He's been on the
He's
show.
online.
Yeah.
He's online. So I feel like we have to.
I'll be honest. I usually like to mute and delete these people. I cannot stand the people that are pretending to be Carter Hawkins. It's like so ridiculous.
Yeah, who wants to pretend to be Carter Hawkins?
Like,
that's what I'm saying. It may not be.
That'd be like somebody dressing
Jed.
up to be me for Halloween.
That's kind of cool.
You're that guy.
I don't know how I would just dress up to be Luke
Well,
Stuckmeyer.
you'd be vibing for one.
I would get some Asics and then I would get a Travis Matthew hat.
Asics.
It's actually me.
It says
though.
actually,
These are
it's
all
actually
birds.
me though.
All birds. Okay.
I do have a pair of Asics. My wife bought them.
Asics are on their way back, brother. So
I know.
that was a compliment.
Oh, thanks. I take it all back. All right, so we're going to grade Justin Steele since he's in the chat.
Yeah.
It says he just said that it is him. So
He says he sees me all the time in the locker room. That's not like a secret.
That's not a secret.
Or the Hawaiian shirts.
Hawaii shirt.
Justin, which of the three of us almost ran over you once on a bicycle?
That's a good.
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
Which of us almost ran over you on a bicycle, and where were you? That's how we're going to determine if this is really Justin Steele.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we're going to Steele. We're also going to handle third base as just a position because I guess we could do a special report card for Paredes and go back and do one for Morel. Let's just combine them together. I don't think we need to put Nick Madrigal and everybody else on there, but that's coming in just a bit.
Why not?
You can make it part of your overall third base grade if you want, Law. First, playoff talk. The Mets have moved on thanks to former Cub Jose Quintana.
Wow. Is that really?
It might actually be him.
It might actually be him. He said he didn't almost run me over, LOL.
No, we just started making that joke, and I forgot that he didn't.
They're the ones who made the joke.
It's possible it's Justin Steele. I want to change my grade to an A+.
Maybe he remembers. Maybe this person remembers the tweet.
Yeah, an A++, also an invite
and
to the.
But he did say the street name, and like he is correct about that. So maybe I have no reason now to not believe that it's actually him.
Well,
if it is the real Justin Steele, slide into one of these gentlemen's DMs or call them if you have their number right now, so that we actually know. Because I don't believe you.
We'll just put you on the phone.
Yeah.
Well, call in. We got the hotline.
Seriously, yeah.
Or that.
We'll be
No, we'll
still be real though, even though Justin's in the chat. We'll be real and give him our real grades.
It's a nice picture of his son and his wife there in the profile picture.
Yeah.
Very nice. His son's his son's getting big already.
Bo, right?
Yeah, Bo.
Yeah.
That's a great name. I tried to convince my wife to go Bo, but
Bo Stuckmeyer.
Suburban Chicago, Bo doesn't fly as well as it does, everywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
I thought it was me awesome. Bo Stuckmeyer?
Now, would you have gone B-O or B-E-A-U?
B-O. I would have gone B-O.
Bo stuck in my tire.
And that's my wife. Oh. That was her protest was they're going to call him B.O.
Yeah.
And I was like, so? And they could call him worse things with the last name Stuckmeyer.
They called you Luke
B.O.
They called you Luke Skywalker, and you hated it.
Luke Skywalker. I cried until then. My parents took me to see the first Star Wars, which had only been out a couple weeks, and I came back to school like, you're damn right I'm Luke Skywalker. That was until all the weird sister stuff came out in the movies. Quintana. Jose Quintana. Huh? Cubs won the trade. He keeps on pitching. Cubs won the trade. Jose Quintana's winning playoff games. Yeah. By the way, Dylan Cease did not win that playoff game yesterday.
Yeah, he's had 2 bad appearances.
Yeah. Dylan Cease didn't have a good game. Jose Quintana. How many shutouts has he had now? Like the end of the season? 2 in a row, right?
It's crazy.
So something like is he getting his second win in the career, right?
Shutout innings. Yeah, he's got like 11 shutout innings in a row or something.
He's moved around Quintana the last few years. Cardinals at one point, Pirates, right? Mets, obviously. Like he's moved around a lot the last few years, but I feel like he's been at least decent for most of those teams. Maybe not the guy that you want to be starting a playoff game, but clearly went out and did well against a really good lineup. And I tweeted it out yesterday. I was just kind of looking at the Mets playoff odds from last season or from the regular season, and they were as low as like 13.1%, I believe, to like basically to start September. Not as low as like say the Tigers. The Tigers were at like a 2 or 3% into September as well, and went on an insane run to make the playoffs. But the Mets were pretty low playoff odds. Like the Diamondbacks until maybe like the last couple weeks of the season, were still pretty high up there as far as like their own playoff odds. The Mets had to go on a really, really strong run. I think they were 17-9 or something like that in September. So I think part of it is like a team catching fire at the right time and riding that into the playoffs. Like that happens all the time. We see that in the baseball playoffs where a team just starts clicking at the right time, gets into the playoffs. You know, they don't necessarily have to win the division anymore because obviously there's 3 wild card teams. And this is not like to say the Cubs should just be shooting for the wild card anymore, right? Like this, like going back to what we like the wild card, the Cubs should still be shooting for winning the division, but
running away with the division.
Yeah, like that should always be like the 90. Trying to build a 90+ win team consistently, a division winner consistently. Like that's where the Cubs' goal should be. Like not just making the wild card and trying to make magic happen. That shouldn't be the ceiling for the what the team wants to get to. But the Mets are another example of a team that, and obviously they spend a lot of money. They have the highest payroll in baseball, I believe. They still won 89 games, so it wasn't like they won 84 and beat the Cubs by a game like the Diamondbacks did last year. So they still won a lot of games, have spent a lot of money, but barely got in the playoffs by a game over the Diamondbacks, winning one of those 2 doubleheader games to end the year. And then so they played hot baseball all September, got in there like on the last day of the season. Actually, the day
since
after
June,
the
they're
season,
really
right?
good.
Yeah, they've been really good, but like
Yeah.
it was a lot of work to get back to where they needed to get to, and they go into the playoffs hot, and now they're taking teams out that at least finished ahead of them in the standings, right? I guess it's a good run for them. It's another example of like catching fire at the right time and riding that into the postseason.
Speaking of the Mets, and Chef Kevin's got a nice comment there, 70-40 in the last 110, but Mike Puma from the New York Post has the quote from Mets owner Stephen Cohen.
Also, sorry.
Yeah.
Grimace. The Mets have Grimace to thank. Remember
Oh,
that?
yeah, that's right, Grimace.
Grimace was huge in this turnaround the Mets had midseason.
People are saying. Yeah.
Steve Cohen on Francisco Lindor, who hit the grand slam, right? And remember, the first year of that contract, he didn't play real well in New York. It wasn't, or maybe it was the second year, but he had a year where you were like, oh, maybe Lindor's not going to age as well as I thought he was, He says, quote, that $341 million is looking pretty freaking good right now. That's my owner. That's the guy I want, right? That's what you want your owner to say. Yep, that $341 million I spent, looking pretty good right now, isn't it? That's what you want. I heard on the radio, I think it was Mike Greenberg's show on the way in, and they were kind of like debating. It was Mets fans against Phillies fans, and the Phillies fans were saying, well, you can't just have stars. You got to have a bunch of good players. And I said, wait. They're not looking at enough teams that have really good players but don't have the superstar player, right? Like, that's what I keep saying. Give me a superstar in the Cubs lineup, and it changes the whole lineup. Let's not say the Mets don't have superstar players. They do. He spends big money on players, and when some of them don't work out, he just flips the page and goes on to the next one. That's what I want. It's not that they don't have good players mixed with superstar players. They do, but they're still spending a ton of money, and they are not afraid to throw around $341 million because that's the price of doing baseball now.
Yeah, they got a lot of good players on that team. Like Lindor he hit the grand slam. The grand slam was yesterday, right? Yeah, I'm not mixing up the games. No. And he's probably going to finish second to Shohei in MVP voting. Like maybe a different year he gets that MVP nod, but just not his year, right? Man, the Mets are a team that just continue to go out and obviously having the ownership of Steve Cohen helps with that, where you can go out. He's allowing whoever, David Stearns to run the baseball operations his way, spend the money, get the players, and then when things don't work out, right? Like they didn't make the playoffs last year, like try to change gears but continue to push for that playoff appearance and playoff spot. And that's an example of like an ownership that's willing to, and not every owner is like that. Like throughout sports, there's very few owners who are just like, I'm going to spend $300+ million on a payroll to make the playoffs, right? Like it's not seen everywhere in professional sports, but that's a good example of a guy who's willing to do that, let his team do that, let his president of baseball operations do that to try to build a winner.
We will get to the report cards in a second as Justin Steele sits in our live YouTube chat waiting to see what grade he's going to be handed on his report cards from Cody, Ryan, and I, and we will do that in just a second. But first, with Empire Today, let me tell you about one of our great sponsors. Let me tell you about one of our terrific sponsors. If you're looking for like flooring, with Empire Today, you get to shop at home convenience, the right products for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a low price guarantee. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring, so of course they have copycats, but Empire can't be beaten on quality, service, and speed, so competitors try to advertise low-quality products that Empire simply won't carry. Empire's not going to promise you the lowest prices because anybody who does that is probably putting flooring in your home that they wouldn't put in theirs. They keep their shopping for floors simple with a curated product selection. Empire's philosophy has helped you find what you need, not overwhelm you with choices. What they leave out of their selection is just as important as what they put in. Then they've got this virtual floor designer thing. I mean, really, it's a simple idea, but it's also brilliant. You take a picture and instantly see how new floors would look in your room. Shop for floors. Go ahead and try it at the big box store. That's risky because you might be talking to someone who was working in plumbing and selling toilets from Kohler the day before or timber for people's siding or wood deck the day before that. They pride themselves at convenient shop-at-home experience. They help customers shop for floors, and then they help you out by servicing their own warranties as well. If an issue does arise, just call Empire. All listeners here at CHGO, even Justin Steele, if he uses the code CHGO, would receive $350 off. He doesn't have to drop his name. He doesn't have to say, I play for the Cubs. All he's got to do is drop CHGO and get $350 off when you use the promo code CHGO. Restrictions apply. See EmpireToday.com/CHGO for details.
Oh, man. Our friends at Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary are here to elevate your autumn, Justin. Sunnyside is your home for judgment-free cannabis shopping. They have a crazy selection with over 100 different strains to choose from, with easy online ordering and in-store pickup wherever you are in Illinois. Sunnyside has a location for you. They have spots as far south as Champaign and as far north as South Beloit. Stop in the store nearest you for expert guidance from their staff or select from quality lines like Cresco or Florcal. Here for the summer is Good News Tea Time Disposable Vape, bringing classic lemonade flavor that's perfect for the golf course, Justin. All right, because we all need a little help staying loose on the green. I know our friend, Corey Friedman, he loves the Mindy Seagulls award-winning chocolates at Sunnyside.
Yeah.
He doesn't shut up about them. I go over to his apartment, and he just cannot stop talking about them. All right? You, too, can be like Corey Friedman and get those chocolates or anything else at Sunnyside.
Like chocolate.
Yes.
Yeah, we know you do.
You, too, Luke. You, too, can do that by going to sunnyside.shop. For bright buys every day, including 50% off your first 3 online purchases. Enter promo code HICHGO at checkout to qualify. Exclusions apply. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary. Bright buys every day only for 21 plus or Illinois medical card holders. Can I put my 2 cents in now?
I feel like he had something to say.
Yeah, I know. We're up against the time. Yes.
I just wanted to say that, like, the Mets also have had, like we've talked about, a lot of over projections too. Like Mark Vientos, for example.
Like guys outperforming
or
projections?
outperforming.
Okay,
That's what I meant to say. Outperforming projections.
They've had the perfect recipe.
Right. Like Vientos, like they had that whole thing going on with Vientos or Beatty. Seems like they figured that out and they're probably going to trade Beatty this offseason. I think that while they have spent money, they also have been okay with just moving a bunch of it and eating it because that payroll they have, they're paying Verlander and Scherzer to not play for them.
Yeah,
a lot.
You know what I mean? And I think if you're going to have an owner who really cares about winning, which it seems like Steve Cohen does because he doesn't care that they're paying Verlander and Scherzer all that money to not play for them. If you have an owner that is okay with that, you can, as a fan, feel a lot more comfortable about giving however much money to any player. It's whenever they start to move guys and then not replenish it that will make fans worry. And as someone who has not necessarily hammered down on Tom Ricketts as much as a lot of fans, I will say that, you know, how they decided to do things after the pandemic season where they traded Yu Darvish and then really didn't do anything to try and fill that hole, like I was hoping that they would at the time, and then they only ended up signing a very much older and past his prime Jake Arrieta. Like, it's very telling of the teams and how they operate. And so as someone who, has grown very frustrated with how the organization is ran from, that off the field, I can't sit here and say that I'm not jealous of how the Mets are doing things from front office and ownership perspective. It is very frustrating. So we can sit here like we did last year and laugh about how they spent all that money and missed the playoffs, but here they are. And this was supposed to be a season that they took a step back because everyone thought they were taking a step back to gear up to give Juan Soto the bag. And now they're here in the NLCS, and they're still going to go and try and give Juan Soto the bag. Yeah. And it's just like the Cubs should be part of that conversation, man. Like I think they're in a really good spot. And now they have David Stearns, who came from Milwaukee, and if he continues to do what he did in Milwaukee from player development, drafting, all that stuff, on top of the fact that they have an owner like Steve Cohen, like they could go on a really nice, consistently sustained success run, maybe somewhat like the Dodgers. We might be talking about that in 10 years if all things play out well for them. They are still the Mets, and everything bad always seems to happen to the Mets at the end. But if you're a Mets fan, you have to be excited about the future, if not the present, but the future as well. And I wish that I could feel that way about the Cubs.
He throws around money. What would stop him from going after Corbin Burns with the Brewers tie?
Yeah.
Sure.
No, and like, you also got to just give credit to the Mets for what they've done this season. Like, you've kind of mentioned a lot of it, but like Kodai Senga pitched twice now for him. Once in the regular season, once in the postseason, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like, he hasn't really pitched for him. Edwin Diaz, who's their $100 million closer, has not pitched like a $100 million closer, or even like someone you really want closing games for a lot of this year.
He blew a game against the Phillies.
Right? I mean, even yesterday, two guys on in the ninth until he finished out the game, but like he hasn't pitched that way this season. So those are two of their big guys, big name guys on the team that have underperformed in ways. And so when Cody mentions like a lot of what has gone the Mets' way is other guys outperforming their projections, like, again, I take it back to the Jed Hoyer thing last week at his press conference of like, you do need to have guys outperform their projections to be able to do special things and have special seasons. You also need someone like Francisco Lindor to help you out and be able to carry your team when maybe those guys aren't necessarily outperforming their projections for chunks of the season. Like, you do need guys like Francisco Lindor, but they also have had a lot of guys that have just played better than maybe what their expectations were, and that's what you need.
And Lindor, like, his first couple years with the Mets weren't very good for what he was getting paid, and this year he put together an MVP caliber season. And so whenever you move all that money and you're not very active in free agency last offseason, if you get an MVP season like you did from Lindor, which I don't know what his Fangraphs projection was, but the fact that happened, Pete Alonso still, as much as I'm not a big fan, like, he still gave you 30-plus homers.
They might end up just keeping him.
Like, what's his name? Nimmo is a solid center fielder. Like, they have good players. It's just the fact that, like I mentioned, Vientos, and I think Francisco Alvarez is could potentially be one of the best catchers in baseball one day. It's really unbelievable that they got this far with the pitching staff they had, and Senga being hurt all year.
Yeah. And like JD Martinez was one of their bigger free agent signings.
I forgot that he was the big one. Yeah,
but he had like a okay year, like definitely not the year he had with the Dodgers last season. So it's not like he came in and just immediately revamped the offense or like added this huge bat. Like, it was still a good season. Like, I think he was right around like at least WRC plus was like 109 or 108, 110, something like that. So still like an above average season, a solid season, but probably not exactly what they expected. But I mean, he also only signed like a 1 year, $12 million contract. It wasn't like they broke the bank to get him. But like I think that just goes back to the overall point of like, some guys are going to underperform projections. Like, that just happens in a baseball season. If you have stars who provide a very high floor, and if you have guys who overperform their projections, that's when you have good seasons. And the Cubs didn't have that this year.
Sure.
That's why they're not in the playoffs. They didn't have that on either side of guys outperforming. They didn't have the star player, and they didn't have guys overperform projections enough to get them where they wanted to go.
Sure.
Let's start the report cards. Let's start with third base because I don't know if there was a position.
We're going to keep Justin Steele here as long as we possibly can.
That's right. This is called a tease, Justin. He's in the podcasting world now. He knows.
Yeah, he knows.
It's about teasing.
Yeah.
Let's start with third base because I'm not sure there was a more important position on the Cubs roster going into 2024. Been trying to find that person since Chris Bryant. They moved on from Chris Bryant, and they've been trying to fill that spot ever since. You know, Wisdom's had a shot there. Madrigal's had a shot there. Master Boney's had a shot there. And they decided, as an organization, we're going to put Christopher Morel there. The best thing for this organization would be is if Christopher Morel can lay off sliders and he can figure out third base. If we can give him an everyday position and have that powerful bat that can lay off that bad pitch every once in a while, that will be the thing that really catapults this team. If we can get a star player at third and he's our best shot at it. I think it was the right move. It didn't work out. And then they made the trade for Paredes, and that might work out in the long term.
But we're talking about 2024.
We're talking about 2024. This is not a Jed Hoyer report card. This is a third base report card. And so for third base, I personally thought about doing something in the D range just because Morel owns the White Sox. And he did it, homered again. But that's one game, and I can't. So I had to give third base an F. The experiment was, without question, a failure, an F. And that doesn't mean I don't like Christopher Morel. That doesn't mean I don't think he's a very likable player. It seems like he's a very nice young man. I rooted for him. I cheered for him. But if you're asking me the grade for third base for the Cubs this year, there could not be a bigger F on the team. Third base was a huge problem.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That Morel obviously played the first 4 months of the season, right, going to the trade deadline. Like third base was basically his job every day. And I know earlier in the season there were a lot more like defensive replacements at the end of games and stuff. Like Madrigal would go in and like late, like in the 8th inning or whatever, play the last 2 innings on defense, which is kind of a sign of like they still weren't ready to give him the shot, the everyday job at third base. Still don't necessarily believe in his defense there. There was so long where just the underlying numbers, the expected numbers, they were so good, and you were like, this can't just continue, man. Like the Megan Montemurro, she was here Monday. She said the same thing. Like there was a whole large portion of the season where you're like, this guy's getting screwed. Yeah. He's hitting the hell out of the ball. Like his numbers should be better.
He was statistically the most unluckiest player in baseball for like the first 2 months of the year.
Which
not like, defensively, offensively.
Yeah, which matters. I think it did matter, but like it got to a point where the results just weren't showing up, and those things we talked about, like his improvements in plate discipline, his walk rate was higher, his strikeout rate was way lower. Like they didn't completely go back to their pre-2024 levels, but they were starting to go back in those directions. Right? Like the strikeout rate was getting higher over like the middle couple months of the season. The walk rate was getting a little bit lower. I feel like you started seeing a little bit more of the tendencies he used to have as far as his plate discipline. I don't think it got to a bad point, but maybe a little bit of going back to some old habits, on occasion. To the point where it just like at the end of the day, by the time they traded him, the numbers just were never there. They just didn't get there, and then defensively, I think there were points where maybe you saw improvements, but it wasn't enough to where you really felt comfortable with him at third base. I know we got to go to an ad break, and I'll give it to you in a sec.
You're going to tease the grade?
I'll tease my grade.
Ryan's teasing the grade.
I didn't even talk about Paredes.
That's a professional tease right there. I'm going to also tease that I have a question about Christopher Morel that I'll ask both of you after Ryan's grade. But first, Ryan's going to tell us about our good friends at Game Time.
We love Game Time. I used Game Time recently to go to a EDM show, CHGO Luke didn't want to go with me, but
But I do love the EDM.
He doesn't love.
Never
the
talk
EDMs.
about this.
Luke just has kids. Couldn't make
They
the
love
show.
EDM. I love EDM.
But I was able to go to this show by using Game Time, and specifically Game Time Picks. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Like I said, I went to a CHGO show. I used that Game Time Picks feature, filtered out the fluff, trimmed down the options, and gave me the deal that I was looking for. But some of the things I really love about Game Time, it's got that all-in pricing feature. So you toggle the feature at the top, and it'll show you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. It actually gives you a view of your seat, panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. So if you don't know if you've never been to the place where whatever event it is you're going to, you get a look at where that seat exactly is, looking at the stage or the game or whatever it is. So you get a real up close look at what you will be looking at if you do buy that ticket. I think that's one of the best parts about it. Game Time also comes with the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it?
Game time. Who? Whether it's pro or college, the app to bet football is Circa Sports Illinois. Circa Sports, it's sports betting the way it should be. Circa Sports Illinois has high betting limits, low holds, and exceptional customer service. Bet on all your favorite teams in every game this season. Spreads, props, futures, or in-game, Circa Sports has it all. Fund and bet like a pro from anywhere, anytime in Illinois. Download your new bookie today at circasports.com. Must be 21 and older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. It appears that maybe Justin Steele left the live YouTube chat. He either didn't like my Morel F grade or he was sick of waiting for his report card. And maybe he'll just come back later and check
maybe
it
I'll
out.
Hop in.
Sorry, we interrupted Ryan, and I don't want to forget. I have a question for you after you give your grade.
So Morel, what I was saying, the offense just didn't get to a point where you felt good about the numbers. The defense just never got to a point where you felt good about the defense. Obviously, they traded him for what they hope was some more stability in Isaac Paredes. That was Justin's eating breakfast, so we're good.
He's here.
And then you bring in Isaac Paredes, who I still think could be a good player. He's been a good player for a few years now, but just his 2 months of the Cubs didn't produce either, and he had struggles in like June, starting like at some time in June. Like he had been a few weeks of struggles even when they did trade for him, and those seem to extend into the last 2 months of the season. So while I do think he could be a good player for the Cubs, I did like the trade. He's got 2 or 3 more years of team control, and maybe he's the third baseman for the next few years for him, and a productive third baseman at that. I still believe in that, but that's, as we've talked about, like that's a long-term, a future thing. Right. But it's kind of, you come down to what do they do in 2024? Morel didn't produce enough to the point where you needed him to the first 4 months of the year. Isaac Paredes didn't produce in the last 2 months after they brought him in. Maybe being traded in midseason and going through the stresses of being traded or potentially being traded affected him. But in the end, he didn't. He just didn't. He just didn't produce. I think overall, the third base position didn't produce this season. Weren't very good. It's got to be an F for me as well.
Okay. FF. The question before we get to Cody.
It's about time y'all gave some Fs. That way when everyone on social media yells at y'all too.
Well, it's still not going to make Godfather happy.
No, Godfather.
Godfather might be. He might actually like me for more so now. I've been given a lot of Fs of late.
There's no real answer to this, but I am curious if you think when Morel was doing the right things at the plate, but statistically the unluckiest player in all of baseball, had he not been unlucky in that stretch, just some of the balls start to squeak through and he gets base hits, is there a world where you think the unluckiness ruined him offensively for the Cubs? Like, the experiment was ruined right there. Like, is it as simple as if he'd been a little more lucky early in the season when he was doing things the right way, may he have never gone back to his bad habits, chasing the slider, going outside of the strike zone, and we're sitting here having a completely different conversation just because he was unlucky and then couldn't help himself and went back to his old habits?
I mean, I don't know.
It's hard to speak for him.
No, I don't know.
For me, I hate to say it because I was such a fan. I think I'm not the only one.
Everybody's a fan.
Everyone loved Morel, and when they traded him, it was
the power was real too. Like the raw power
was there, and
something that the Cubs don't have necessarily throughout the lineup. Obviously,
like a lot of people have given me crap because I thought Morel could be a star. It was like, well, he hit 26 homers and was one of the best hitters on the team in 2023.
Yeah.
He had took a massive step in just year 2 of his first full season with the Cubs, and he was 24 years old. And I wouldn't say he was a top-tier prospect in the organization. Maybe he was in their top 30 at one point whenever the organization was, not necessarily as healthy as it is now. But to me, I wouldn't say he was a diamond in the rough, but he definitely wasn't like, he was never a top 100 prospect in baseball, right?
He was never Brennan Davis, PCA.
Right. He came up from Double A when they called him up, right?
So,
because they had lost so many
to see the steps that he had taken in 2023 compared to how he ended 2022, which was not good at all, I had a lot of optimism. I think it's okay to have some optimism about a young player. So I wanted to say that before I give this grade, because I think anyone has listened to this show over the 2.5, 3 years that we've done it, I've been Christopher Morel's biggest fan in terms of believing that he could have turned into that star player the Cubs needed desperately. And, it just didn't work out, man. And whether, you can only use that he was the most unluckiest player in baseball for so long. I don't get it. Baseball is stupid, whatever. But at the end of the day, not even just offensively. I mean, he was statistically the worst defensive third baseman out there. I defended him early on in April at the position because it was April, and it just didn't really get any better. I think the routine plays got better as the season went went along. But I mean, he still finished like minus 11 outs above average, at least with the Cubs, at third base. And, I think that if they would have been able to find a position for him, they would have been more likely to keep him. But the fact that they had played him all over the field and maybe second base was probably the only position that he could have played and been competent at, I guess. But you had Nico Hoerner there, whether defensively, Hoerner probably better than him. Is Morel long-term going to be the better hitter than Hoerner? I think there's still question there. And I think Hoerner had proven at that point that was his spot, and they weren't going to just trade Hoerner to play Morel at second base, especially with the season that he was having. So I do think in some aspects, the fact that the defense, he was focusing so much on defense, trying to earn that spot there, it did affect his offense. It's not an excuse, but I do think that played a part. So, yeah, I mean, it was bad. I did not envision this type of season for him at all, man. Like, I brought up his game log from just with the Cubs this year, and 421 plate appearances. He hit 199 with a 302 on base and a 373 slug with a 92 WRC plus. His K rate was 24%, which was significantly lower, like we talked about. His K rate in 2023 was over 30%. He cut it down to 24%, and he walked it over 11% of the time too. Yeah. So what we're saying about the improvements that he did make, they're there in terms of the K rate and the walk rate. But he just, 18 homers somehow led the team. But and like we said, he had raw power, but it just didn't produce enough. They put him in the 4-hole. I don't know if I should blame Counsell for that or not, but with that raw power, that's a bat that needs to be in the middle of the order somewhere. They moved him down to the 6-hole at some point. That still didn't help. I don't think it really mattered where he hit in the order last season. It just did not work out for him. And then, with Paredes, I'm someone, and I said this the other day, it's not that I don't like the trade. I understand the trade. To be able to flip a guy like Morel who struggled that bad and get a guy who had multiple years of control. He's only 25 years old. Was an all-star player.
Looks like he'll provide more stability or a little more certainty
Right.
to the position than what Morel was getting.
And even though I think the defense wasn't necessarily impressive either, and Luke, you have not shut up about that, it is better than Morel's
some
defense.
like 3-air games.
There was one.
Okay.
Okay.
There was a 3-air game.
One game where he did that. Okay. Not that I'm saying that it's excusable, but I'm just saying like it was one game. All right. It's still better than what Morel is giving you. He at least made all the routine plays, right? It still was bad though. Like his second half with the Cubs, 223, 325 on base. He slugged 307. That's worse than Morel. All right. And he had an 86 WRC plus with the Cubs in the second half. His K rate's low, 17%. Walk rate around the same as what Morel's was. And only 3 homers though. And it's a position you need power from, and this team needs power. So I know a lot of fans questions about Paredes. When the trade happened, a lot of people questioned if he'd be able to hit at Wrigley Field, and because he's a straight pull hitter. All his home runs that he's ever hit were straight to left field at Tropicana Field, and that he hit better on the road than he did at Wrigley. I don't have the numbers up, but there's no doubt in my mind that he hit better on the road than he did at Wrigley, and I think that's something that fans at least have the right to question how to feel about Paredes going into his first full season with the Cubs. So on top of them two, and I'm just going to say this just because I'm so over having to talk about him, Nick Madrigal had a minus 0.7 Fangraphs WAR. He was absolutely atrocious at third base this year, on top of the fact that I've had to continue to find a way to have some sort of hope that things would work out. He was all terrible this year. He didn't help third base at all either. And I won't even go into all those numbers. It's just the Fangraphs WAR alone says everything. So, yeah, third base gets an F, man. I don't know how you can't give third base an F. It's just what it is, man. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to go into 2025 with some optimism about Paredes.
Yeah, I think you can be optimistic about Paredes.
And I just said what I said.
2024.
Yeah.
And I just said what I said about Madrigal, but if he is your backup third baseman, a bench guy, as much as I really am ready to just see Shaw at least play that utility role, as much as I'm ready for that at the very least, I just don't want to see Madrigal starting on a consistent basis on this team ever again.
No,
I
think we're all kind of in agreement on this, obviously, with our grades, but
yeah,
I think we all feel like we feel optimistic that Paredes will be more productive than he was in the 2 months of the Cubs next season, provide some stability, some more certainty to that position. He's a former All-Star. He has been good for a few years now, especially down in Tampa. So, I do feel I have some confidence in him that he's going to be good for the Cubs. Maybe Morel breaks out with the Rays, right? He didn't do it in his 2 months with the Rays. Maybe he does too. But I do still feel confident that Paredes is going to be there and have a good Cubs career, however long it lasts, right? I think he's controllable. He's not on a long-term expensive deal. And he probably has someone, like I said, I have some confidence that he'll provide a little more stability and certainty to that position.
If Morel can't figure it out with the Rays, then I will openly admit that if there is one player that I've ever been more wrong about, it will be Christopher Morel.
I hope he does well. Speaking of Tampa, did you see the roof was ripped off the Trop in the hurricane last night? The roof was ripped off the building.
Yeah. Someone tagged me in a tweet related to it.
I have 2 friends that moved down there 2 years ago. One in Sarasota, and he got out on Sunday with his family, and the other is in Tampa. Haven't heard from him today, but last night they were taking on heavy water. So it's gonna be bad.
And they were using the Trop as a staging for first responders, so that's not great.
No, and then you watch Anderson Cooper standing out there. Get this guy.
Hey, Ginger Z's down there. Give her a break.
Why? Get out of the hurricane. It doesn't help me.
She needs to show the viewers. You're a former weather person.
I am. I don't need the weather person standing underneath a building saying it's windy and raining. We can see the pictures.
Anyway, before we move on to Justin Steele.
Because he's waiting.
Because he's waiting patiently. I'm assuming there's been a lot of chats related to, like, we should have never played Morel at third base.
I don't agree with that.
And I agree. I don't think that they really had no choice given what Craig Counsell was given for the roster. Now, should they have continued to play Morel at third base as long as they did? Probably not. But I think you had to at least give him the run for a couple months, because if they played him at third base, it gave you the roster flexibility. And it allowed them to be able to call up PCA when they did.
The bigger problem is having a question mark like Morel at third and having Madrigal be the backup plan.
Yeah.
That's the bigger problem.
Yeah.
There was no backup plan. All right, let's get to Justin Steele.
That is if you were planning to keep him. Now, I understand fans who also thought that you probably should have traded him at his highest value too. So
Justin said he's going to move to the toilet.
Moving to the toilet. This part.
Let's go.
Justin, you'll be happy to know that your grade will not be crappy.
Yeah.
It's a good grade. Justin Steele had a career best 1.099 whip. It is his third straight season with an ERA of 3.18 or lower. That's from our friend Alex Cohen. He finished with a 3.07 earned run average. The part where he drops from an A to a lower grade for me makes me a hypocrite, and I fully admit it. I didn't give Jordan Wicks a grade at all. I just went incomplete because of injuries. I said injuries, I can't influence his grade. I saw enough of Justin Steele to know that he's at least an A or a B again, right? But we also know that he holds himself to this standard of, I can pitch 180 innings.
Mm-hmm.
And so the injury on the first game of the season was certainly crushing for him. It was crushing for fans. It was like, oh no, here we go again. I'm just thankful it wasn't an arm injury, right? Mm-hmm. But he made 24 starts and pitched 134 innings. Tony Andracki has a really good article, if you're looking for it, at marquee.com right now, where he talks about Justin Steele ranking 32nd in starts over the last 3 years. That's the biggest part where, like, the stuff and what he does when he's on the mound is unquestionable. Makes him one of the best pitchers in baseball. The place where he can take himself from star player to superstar player and into the, when you're talking 5 best pitchers in baseball, that's the best ability is availability. And so he's 41st in innings for starters in the last 3 years. He said right in the article with Andracki, he wants to make 32 starts and he wants to pitch 180 innings. So I'll go with a B for Justin Steele, which I think if he had had one less injury, even if you take the one out the first part of the season and guys did a great job covering for him, I think very possibly that grade is at least an A-. And I did consider B+, but I'll just go B. It's a really good grade, and it was another really good season.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. Like, ERA was right about what it was last year. FIP a little bit higher than it was last season. Home runs per 9 a little bit higher, walk rate a little bit higher, strikeout rate. Like, a lot of it was right around the same. Another really good Justin Steele season. Yeah, I think the main thing is he got hurt, and it's hard to knock him for getting hurt because it was like a freak injury.
Yeah, it makes me a total hypocrite. I say injuries will not impact it, but it's the only thing where I can say he could improve on. I don't know. I'm a hypocrite. I admit it.
No, I think
big of you.
Credit to me.
I think I'm
an honest hypocrite.
Yeah, I think I ended up giving him B+ is what I said. Law. Yep. B+ is what I ended up giving Justin Steele. Again, like, a really good season out of him when he was on the mound. He had the first injury. I think he missed 6 weeks with the hamstring, and then in September he missed about, I think it would have been like 3 starts in September with the elbow tendonitis, I think is what it was called. And then he came back and he made a couple more starts to end the year, but wasn't like at a point where they were going to push him to go really long in his starts anymore, or whatever. I keep hitting this microphone. It's not picking it up, is it? Okay. Yeah, it's another really, really good season from him, and a season that had those numbers stretched out over the full season. You know, maybe he makes the All-Star team. Maybe he's more in like the Cy Young conversation as he was last season, right? It didn't happen obviously because of the injury, and I think this kind of goes back to what I said. This kind of goes back to what I said with kind of Ian Happ when we graded him the other day, of like A's. If you're giving an A, like I gotta feel like a guy really exceeded expectations. You know, like I think that's a fair way to look at it. Is like an A is like you exceeded expectations. You did everything you needed to do and more, right? I don't know if I'd say Justin exceeded my expectations this season. I think my expectations were high, and he did a really good job of meeting them. But like Luke said, like Justin's a guy that wants to pitch 180 to 200 innings in a season, 30 to 32 starts or whatever that is. Like he wants to go a full season, go deep into every start, and have a really good season that way. He didn't have that this season, and that's because obviously a lot of that had to do with the injury to begin the season, and so you can't knock him too much for that. But I'm sure he wants to get to that level and be able to stay healthy for most of the season, make those 30 plus starts and 180 plus innings. Like that's his goal, right? And I think he gets there. I think then you really start to be like, oh, he really exceeded expectations. Like he really did a lot to contribute to this team. And I think he can get there.
Yeah.
I think he can get there. I think Steele's a guy that's continuing to improve. He's, this season he started adding more back into his repertoire, more pitches back into his repertoire, at least a little more often. He was still a lot of four-seam slider, but started getting some of those other two-seam, changeup, getting those in a little bit more. And so I think that part of it is going to continue to help him expand as a pitcher and improve as a pitcher. So I'm really excited to see what he does moving forward with that. But I think B+ for right now for this season is kind of where I'm at for him.
Edward is probably right. I probably should have gone B+ or a little bit higher because he's right. There should be at least half-grade bump for screaming at the dugout.
In Milwaukee.
Wake up.
When we were there. That was the game we were there.
Wake up.
Yeah, wake up.
Yeah. Oh, that was that game, wasn't it?
Yeah. All right.
Did you knock him points for dropping the coffee on himself?
I did not. It was all before I knew anything about that. Now that he's taking notes in the toilet, I probably should have gone A-. Because if you can take notes while you're, on the can, impressive.
Okay. I'm gonna speak to Justin here because we're just gonna act like as if this really is Justin Steele. We've been doing it the entire show. Might as well. I'll try to be a little bit different from you guys. So I had high expectations for Justin this year. I mean, he was in the Cy Young race in 2023. And it didn't help opening day, getting hurt in Texas. Thank God it wasn't an arm injury. But he still made 24 starts, which is the same amount of starts he made in 2022. He missed the last month of 2022 as well, I believe.
2022, yeah.
In 2022, yes.
Low back, something back.
So, and I'll admit, whenever he had to hit the injured list later in the year, me and Luke both sat here and said, just sit him the rest of the year, because at that point, season was over in our eyes, and we didn't want to risk any more injury, especially because it was a forearm injury or whatever it was.
I was the only one that didn't agree with you guys.
It was, I still don't understand why. But
once it got to June, I said, just
so the fact I'm not going to put a ton of points or take a ton of points away from him for the fact that he went on the injured list the second time. I thought it was a good idea that they did, considering something happened. And if it would have been up to me, he would have sat the rest of the year. But he came back, and I thought he, for the most part, pitched well when he came back too. And those
shorter outings, yeah.
Yeah, they were shorter outings, but whatever. So I guess my knock, if anything, and I feel like, and I say this because I think Justin probably knows this, and it probably bothers him. Even though he didn't pitch as many starts or whatever, he still almost gave up the same amount of homers as he did in 2023. Gave up 14 homers in 2023. This year he gave up 12. Yeah. So imagine if he had pitched 180 innings and was solid, but at the same level he's pitching, more than likely going to go over that total. And one of the things that we gave him a ton of credit for in 2023 was the fact that he didn't give up a lot of homers. The barrel rate for opposing hitters against him was very low, right?
Yeah. I think it was actually lower than it was last season too. Barrel rate.
So to sum it all up, I'm going to give him a B as well. Just because he was still solid, but I feel like in some ways I feel kind of bad because he was for sure at least their second best pitcher. I mean, he was not the reason that they missed the playoffs, in my opinion.
No.
But yeah, I mean, I think if he would have stayed healthy and he kept pitching the way he did, he probably surpasses that number in home runs. But other than that,
he had 12 home runs, right?
He gave up 12 home runs this year.
5 of them were to the Pirates in those first 2 starts back off.
Yeah, those first like 2 or 3 starts, he gave up like 6 homers.
I wonder if Jed thinks that the weather at Wrigley helped Justin Steele this year.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to kind of grade it when you look at last year's numbers compared to this year's numbers because of the injuries. But as Luke also said, availability is, or the best ability is availability, and that's why Jordan Wicks got a grade from me yesterday.
Right? That's what makes me a hypocrite,
right? And not me, because I gave a grade. But yeah, it was a fine season, but I expect better. He's put himself in that tier where if the Cubs in the next 5 years are going to be making the playoffs in the next 5 years, they're going to need Justin Steele to be more like 2023 than this year's Justin Steele. And unfortunately, you got to be healthy. So I know pitchers sustain a lot of injuries these days, but it's not like he's out there throwing 100, So
you're challenging him to throw 100?
I am not challenging him to throw 100, but I feel like more of the pitcher injuries that we see these days are from guys who are throwing 100. So I don't know. Also, credit to me, he unfollowed me on Twitter. So the fact I'm still giving a B, credit to me.
Right. And you hold a grudge, unlike anybody I even know.
Yeah. Also, I don't blame him for unfollowing me on Twitter because I've been very
I unfollowed you on Twitter. Oh no, I didn't.
I've been very negative of late. I get it. I wouldn't want to follow me either if I was a player for the Cubs.
It's Cody Del Grudge.
To not knock him on the grade that much.
Man of integrity.
Here, man.
He said he gave himself a B in the chat earlier, so we're all right around the same spot. Like I said, I think there's obviously potential for better, just health wise. But the more he gets through his major league career, the more, the more he continues to expand the repertoire. Like I said, that's something I said last season. I think that's a lot of that's going to help him be even better, and obviously you hope for a healthier season for him in 2025 because the Cubs are going to need that.
I think I think it was maybe James that said all these B grades. Why did we miss the playoffs? And that's what we've been saying for weeks.
That's why Jed Hoyer got an F.
It's because it's not the sum. It didn't add up to the right thing. Like you can have. It's why I disagree with what they were saying on the Greenberg show this morning. You can have really good players and lots of good players and still have the seasons they were expected to have, but still not make the playoffs because sometimes it takes either A, what Jed wants, guys to exceed their projections, or B, it takes a couple superstar players mixed in with those guys. I think it's easier to go ahead and go get yourself a couple superstar players than it is to just hope that everybody's going to exceed projections, even when you have obviously a way better roster now than you did 2 years ago.
Or build a dome so the weather doesn't affect you.
Or build a dome so that there's no weather.
Dude, if they somehow put a dome on Wrigley.
Don't talk about it. No, we're not talking about it.
Put that in the air.
All right. On Monday, we will continue our grades. Corey and Brennan will have a podcast for you at 11:30 tomorrow.
And I don't think they're doing grades, so they're just going to probably.
Yeah, they'll just do a podcast.
They'll probably have like graphs.
Yeah.
And
there'll be like, graphs and heat maps.
Yeah. Also, Justin says it's not personal, just can't see too much slander of my teammates. And I get it. Like, again, I didn't take it personal.
Again, that's not actually Justin Steele.
Right. If it's not Justin Steele, you did a great job. If it is Justin Steele, you did a great job.
Exactly.
Thanks for checking out the CHGO Cubs podcast. We will see you, 3 of us, on Monday. Until then, thanks for watching and fly the W.
We all silly like the mayor.